problems run much deeper than funding. Funding is one of the elements. But as I mentioned before, young people, they're products of their neighborhoods and products of their home. And I'll say this as a father with, like I said, with 2 young boys in school, I know what they're dealing with, right? And so I look at the progress reports, I look at the report cards, I help them with their homework, I know when they're falling down. And so sometimes we have to also recognize that a lot of the problems we deal with, whether it be education, whether it be criminal justice, start within the home. And so that's where the first responsibility is. Now, again, as elected officials, there are things we can do from the legislative branch, which we're a part of, from the executive branch, whether we're talking about the mayor or talking about the governor, or things from the judicial branch. But again, there is plenty of responsibility and blame to lay around.
The ghost students, the grade changing, the inflated enrollment numbers, those things that are confirmed by Project Baltimore's investigation, but also confirmed by the district themselves in this investigation into Augusta Fells, those things aren't happening in the home, Councilman Bullock. Those things are happening within the school district.
Correct.
So what can you do about that? Does that bother you?
Absolutely. I mean, that's unacceptable.
So what are you doing about it?
Again, we talked about this before in terms of the question, in terms of what can the legislative branch do in terms of grade fixing and changing within schools, right? That's already against the law, right? So it's not a law that we can pass to actually address that. Now, again, that's something that's truly problematic. The other point that I think is worth mentioning, because we talked about the funding for schools. Part of the reason why Baltimore has the allotment for funding for schools is that people have to take into account the geographical cost of education index. Given that we have a majority poor student body, there are different costs as it relates to educating a persistently poor district. And that's why you see those numbers being so high in a place like Baltimore. So again, to your point around the young people who come to school who may be hungry or who may have issues in terms of trauma, a lot of that is reflected in this geographical cost of education index.